Great. Hello, hi, buddy, and welcome. This is Aquarian Media. We're simulcasting. Theresa J. Morris will tell you where you can find this recording on her networks. And Melinda is one of her co-hosts, Melinda D'Amico. I'm Janet Care Lessin and Theresa J. Morris. And everybody say hi real quick in just 60 seconds. Who are you, Theresa?
Hello.
Just go ahead.
Hi, I'm Theresa J. Morris,
Okay.
known as Thurmond maiden name, and I am in Gulf Breeze, Florida, and I have a company called American Communications Online and a social media club, ACO Club, on video. So we're doing all this together for posterity.
Right.
Education.
And Melinda,
Okay.
where are you from?
I'm originally from New York City, and now I'm in New Jersey. So I like to say a hello to all the New Jerseyans. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And I'm broadcasting from Maui, Hawaii. Okay, I'm going to try something here. It's called a share screen. And we made a PowerPoint.
Do you still have me?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's still here. Okay, so let me do this. Got to focus. From the beginning. Yes. Okay. So this is kind of what we did the last couple weeks. We're working on some presentations and YouTubes, and this is the Portal Stargate series. And I'm just going to go click through. You can review our show from last time. I'll put the link down below. I don't have it right now, but I will add it. So this we covered last episode. But I added this picture because Theresa's sister is visiting Brenda, and she gave me this adorable picture of Theresa Jeanette. Is that how you spell your Jeanette? With two N?
No, one N.
Okay, I'll correct that later.
Okay, spelled just like my mother's first name. Okay. Janet is how they say it, but they say that Jeanette is a spelling.
Yeah.
Right. Thurman is a pretty famous name in America. But we'll go into the THUR, THOR. That'll be another show somewhere down the line. So here she is. She came into the world. I don't have a baby picture of me. I got to get that from my sister. She's got all my pictures. So I'm just kind of, this is like a little flashy through review. So we covered TJ's thing. We didn't cover this, but we're going to start with TJ. We'll go back to this. Okay, Theresa, it was TJ. So we're covering the episodes of our life to uncover how Theresa and I started working, unbeknownst to us initially, we were working for the government or the secret government, right? Theresa was more aware than I was. But before we got to that point, which was in the 60s, we're still in 1957. So earlier I recorded I took a bunch of notes on the episodes of our lives. So what happened? You had, let me go back. No.
Flying babies.
Back is the other way. Okay, so I'll go over that. But you ran away and you were taken up to meet your ET family. You know, that would cover the last episode. Then I'm going to cover this. For some reason, you were like the fountain of wisdom. So you're this in 1957.
She is the fountain of wisdom.
We all are.
But even at
but you're special, Theresa. You've got some special calling.
Well, if you can see,
you're very gifted. Everybody has their calling.
That is an old soul. Look at that child. That's an old
She looks
soul.
like she's a grown lady.
I know.
Dressed up like a beautiful little girl.
I showed this to my husband. He goes, she looks the same. I go, yeah. She looks the same. She's an old soul. So what were you explaining to your parents about Sputnik?
Oh, I was trying to tell them about people and, why that's where we come from and about our family. that I knew all about it. And, I was just all excited because they were talking about something that, I was aware of. So it was just an exciting time for me, and they just didn't get it. So
Well,
other
how do you
than,
explain it to people? You've been in contact with aliens. You're 6 years old. I mean, what kind of words did you use? I'm just gonna look real quick.
well, I just remember telling them about it. I know about that, and up there, and that's our star. Well, I don't know if I said star family, but that's our family, and that's where we come from. And oh yeah, that's how we travel. And I mean, I was just all excited trying to tell my mom and dad, and they just thought I was off the chain. They just, I remember being, the excitement and trying to explain to them that's, there'd be more in the future. And it was just an exciting time for me. I mean, they had no idea why I was so excited. They had no idea. All the neighbors were talking about it. It was
what was the
weird.
most interesting part of this story, or that happened to you
Oh,
that
I
time?
just need to remember. I just need to remember about it because it was overhead and it was going through space, and it was a time to, at that time I thought it was going to be a different world. I mean, I was just a little girl, but I knew all about it, and I just wanted to talk about space. And people from space. It was a different world for me, and I didn't understand why everybody was telling me I couldn't talk about it. But in Sunday school and church, and when I was out there in the field, and I had gone up in the spacecraft and come back down, my grandmother found me and said, "Don't ever talk about it."
Right.
So I was just always hushed. So it was like a secret. So the
Yeah,
people,
that's it. That's really in interesting, because I think I would have had the same reaction from my family had I told them this, that, and the other, like the different details that you brought into it. And the more that you saw and it was experienced doing it, you could share, verbally. They thought maybe you wouldn't want to share that because, people could take it for situation or whatever they think, and it's
yeah.
not the right way to think. So I would see that be very common reaction from family that you start sharing it with.
I had a similar thing. I was watching with the family. We had a family room with a television in it, and all these spaceships were blowing up, and I watched one after another blow up. And this was in the 50s, and they were just still trying to get things launched. And I'm not sure that even the United States got a Sputnik up there, but what we were, I don't know what ours were called, but I don't think we had it for a satellite up. Anyway, I turned and looked at them, my brother and sister, and I just was shocked. And I said, "What? You mean we're not in space yet?" Because I had already been in space. I had already been on board ship. And I was
Wow.
just like so shocked that and I just started crying. They couldn't
Mhm.
they couldn't stop me from crying. I was just sobbing. And so yeah.
How old were you then?
In 57 I would have been 3.
Four,
But I was
three,
think I was about 4, or yeah.
4.
Oh,
I
you're
haven't
very
quite
little.
a year, but I thoroughly thought we were in space already, because
Wow.
go back. But I have a little bit of sinus problems today, so it's difficult talking. Sorry.
Yeah, I would have been turning 6 December
Right,
57.
right.
So you'd been about 3 or 4,
About
right?
5 when this actually happened.
Mhm.
Okay, whoops. So let me go back real quick. So I had been on board the ship in 58. So it was somewhere after that. And I'll come back to this later. I'm gonna have to mute and try to clear my sinuses here. Sometimes my neighbor burns, and then like my sinuses get
I
up.
see what you've got. One flipped upside down. They can look in reverse like they're an illusion, but they're
Oh,
actually floating cities in the sky, is what people have seen over in China. And they don't know what kind of illusion or holographic. So there's all kind of talk about that in our world and our community, folks. So
what I
we claim
discovered,
the alien contact
what I
organization.
discovered is they actually would land like on a mountaintop.
City, yeah.
And they come complete with their whole city. There's stories of how overnight a castle appeared, like a whole castle.
Yeah, I'll just be inside a huge, huge cloud.
And they have they just lower it down to the earth. They have a shield when they're in space, so they have atmosphere. And they come here, they land. And that's probably what happened with Camelot. That's why we can't find Camelot, because it took off again.
Well, there's a theory.
And
We may have a lot of theories that people will latch on to. And you just
So
have
we'll
to
go
do your
into
own
that.
research.
We'll go into that further, but that's what I got from my interactions with aliens and my download. But I'm gonna have Theresa do an episode. Okay, we're gonna mute for just a minute. So Theresa, you go and tell this story about your near-death experience, your first near-death experience.
Oh, you want me to talk about 58? I see.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You need to take care of your sinuses.
Yeah,
All right.
right back.
Well, all right. Well, she found some nice pictures to go with it, but the reason this is important, folks, that are into our different world of the paranormal, if you will, and the spiritual community is we support alien civilizations exist, but how I got into it was all these different things that happened to me that I was told to keep quiet all these years, and we're assimilating them all into a story that makes sense to us because we experienced it as experiencers. So mine is when I died I had hepatitis, and I had a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience in the hospital, the St. Francis Hospital. I'd been in the second grade, and they had to bring my, in order for me to get through the second grade so I wouldn't fail because I'd missed so much school, being terribly sick with hepatitis. They said I nearly died, but since I had an out-of-body near-death experience, I saw people over me. And it was when they had come and I think in 57, 58, they had just started learning about the dialysis machines. And as it goes, I was very, very sick. I turned as yellow as those stairs there. And I was pooping as white as the white in that picture. That wasn't normal. In other words, I had complete liver failure. So I wasn't going to live without a liver. And they don't know how I got hepatitis, but it actually shocked my system so bad they couldn't bring me back. And it was several months, 3.5, 4 months, till finally I was just gone. And so they had brought up this dialysis machine from New Orleans. If you've ever seen a dialysis machine, it cleans your blood. And they were just getting them, I guess, or learning about them. So they tried it on me and it helped, but it also took me out of body. So I passed, okay, during that time. And that's when I saw two angels above me, like the little girl sitting there, but there's a light like that and two people, two beings. And psychically, my parents couldn't, they were in the room crying and everything because I wasn't responding on this. I was hooked up to that machine that took your blood out and put it back in. I've seen my daughters on them and my husband on them. I understand them now as an adult, but it's pretty hard on your system cleaning your body, especially it was just coming out in 57, 58. So it's hard on my body. So my spirit left, and the beings that talked to me psychically, they told me, you're going to be okay. And as you know, you're going to do great things, which we all hear, you know, when we go out of body. The beings, they're always motivational speakers, so to speak, or angelic guides. But those same beings, I think, recently saved me when I almost killed myself recently. They grabbed the steering wheel of my car and pulled me back on the road because a man was pulling over to hit me, and I was going very fast on the interstate. But
Wow.
those beings are there, and it seems like they only come. I never see them any other time except during trauma. So they're there if it's not our time. There's some help these higher beings that we're attached to, angels, angelic ones. You can say your own soul, your spirit guide, your angel, your God. Some maybe think Christ himself, but anyway, there's a part of us that is very, very special. And these beings are guides and they guide us. And I feel like they're always there, and it's important to know. And many, many people like me on the planet are just at peace with the fact that we can go and come back and talk about dying. And I've had this happen several times. So we're weaving this into our story. So Janet, is that good enough? I came back and I was okay at that time.
So this time you saw angels and you talked to angels, correct?
I didn't know any other word.
Right.
Beings
Did you see
that
any
upright
kind of
angels.
Jesus or God or anybody else? Just angels. Okay.
Just two beings that looked at me and told me I'd be okay. And, like I wasn't going to die or whatever. I wasn't leaving.
Right.
So that was the second time that I'd been out of my body. The first time I just fell asleep. I was healthy at 4, when
Right.
I was
We
running
talked
away.
that the last episode.
Brenda, Mama had the baby and I went out and was running away, and people, I guess they put me to sleep so I wouldn't get harmed. It took me up on the spacecraft. So that's one intellectual sighting and participation with out of body. So I felt like that because I could see my body on the ground. I feel like that's a different experience, because
Right.
you leave your body on the ground and you go up and you're there just like you are in a dream, or you still feel your body, you still feel whole. But I think that's your plasma or your interdimensional energy. And then the same thing when I was out of body and I came up like that girl, you still feel whole. And it's like you don't have to look, you just know you're whole. You're still a whole being.
Right.
And you can go back in. So I think the important part is we realize this is normal, and maybe it's only in certain circumstances and only certain people are just privy to that. Doesn't mean I think everybody is. I just think that it depends on what experience you have. Maybe you get in trouble, maybe you get in trauma. At that time, I was running away from home the first time. This time, I was dying. So, they came to help me. Back to you, Janet.
Melinda, do you have any questions for TJ?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
She just hit it on the head. What I was going to ask her when she talked about trauma and stuff. Like a car accident, and it's vehemently, it's very excited, and you really get hit, like blown off from the ground up to God knows 6 feet maybe in the sky, and you wonder how did you survive that. A woman, man, doesn't matter, and you don't have to be big, but you survive it. Like I had a bad car accident when I was in graduate school. It was one of the most poignant experiences I've ever had in my life. And I want to say about from the trauma of it, talking about it and healing and going on. I asked the universe, is how I phrased it, why did you let me live? What do I have so good to give to people, mankind, et cetera, et cetera? And people said to me they love the way I'm a people person. And it's one girl said that to me, and she kind of started crying because it was very traumatic to her. She never hurt anybody. It was bad. Okay. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. I didn't know if I was going to survive it, this, that, and the other. But you said something that made me think a little deeper and question, was there any intervention on earth here? This was in Long Island. I was living there, going to school, getting my second degree with my master's. And I just sat there and I was like, I looked, and then the person that came to interview me for the case was one of my friends, who was a lawyer's friend. And he said, Melinda, I'm kind of in a state of shock
Can you
from
move
what I
forward,
heard that you walked away
Melinda?
with nothing. Yes?
Can you move forward? There you go. Yeah, we had
Okay.
lost you. There you go.
So the person that referred me to the lawyer basically was in shock. He just couldn't believe that I survived what happened to me, etc., all the details. And I felt like there was something or someone possibly, I'm not sure but how, but there was a special, warm, loving air that came through. Could have been someone visited me to tell me I'm here to help you and you will survive and go past this. And I just went through it like it's like it didn't, like nothing happened. There was nothing on my skin, no uh wounds, anything. Only thing was off is that I lost this very expensive piece of jewelry. It was like $1,000 or whatever. But how I found that, that was on the ground. And that was something that I wore for protection. And the girl that was Asian said, yes, they do give you that. So if you felt that, that's true. So it was amazing. I was really upset with it, but I felt that the universe put in place the right people, what I needed to have around me, mostly spiritual in every way possible, and that's why I was able to go and grow past that with no hurdles.
Okay, so we're going to continue with us interviewing
you for that.
Theresa because my sinuses are really bad right now, so hard to talk. I took another sinus pill, so hopefully that'll kick in. So, and correct me if I have some of this, I made these slides based on our notes, and I just found interesting pictures because the internet's full of pictures. Okay, so now you were what, 8 years old during this
Who, me?
Theresa, we're still waiting for
Oh,
Theresa.
sorry. I'm
I
sorry.
can't
Go
talk
ahead.
very well
I think.
because my drippy sinuses right now.
All right, sure. We can follow my timeline for a little while, and
Yeah.
folks, we're going to weave all of them together for a reason, a purpose, to be communicating with you as avatars, people that know they've died and come back and working here for a reason. So you want me to talk about White Sands UFO now, Jan?
Right. So I'm not sure if it was 59 or 60. You said you were 8 years old, so I guess it was a time of year because you turned. You have another birthday December 26th, so we do a year. It's like was it before or after your birthday? So this is probably.
I know I was going into the 4th grade. I felt very important because I got through the 3rd grade. It was like
summer?
I had the summer, after, being in the hospital, living in a hammock because I couldn't walk all that year. And it was very hard. I laid out in a hammock all the summer before because of White Sands, but these beings would come and pick me up, and they were out of orbs. They'd come from the sky in clouds and fall out of orbs. So that's why I believe a lot of these ships are circular and they will fall. They disguise themselves in clouds. And so sometimes you'll see clouds with clouds, and then sometimes you can see clouds by themselves, and they look really uniquely different. So some people, if they've had experiences, start learning to pay attention to those clouds. And I did as a little girl. And I couldn't walk into the house from this red hammock, my grandmother. It was redder than, the burnt orange, but it was because I couldn't walk. I'll never forget that hammock because I couldn't move my hands or my arms or my legs. So my mom or my dad would carry me out and lay me in the hammock. And then I just would be out there for hours and between these trees. But when I walk in, these beings would come and help me. So that was something I struggled through. So I knew that they were training me. So I started wanting to go to White Sands. Isn't that interesting? So
What made you want to go to White Sands?
I don't know.
How do you know about White Sands?
I think now this is part of a story, folks. It's my story. You don't have to believe me, but I believe they can will you to be a part of their reality and push you in directions that helps them and helps
Right.
us at the same time. So some of us may be guided, maybe all of us are. Well, it just depends on who you talk to. But in my reality, it was very, I was very much about graduating each class and studying. I was a good student, and I was anything I could be extra in Girl Scouts. I was in that, and I went to Girl Scout summer school. But this one I was going to miss, which was a big deal to miss Girl Scouts and go. But I got my grandmother and my aunt and uncle to take me to White Sands, New Mexico. And it was a big ordeal. They didn't have interstates then. And
Right.
they'd have to go part of it.
Where
go
were
up
you
and-
living?
I was in Monroe, Louisiana.
So you went from Louisiana all the way to New Mexico.
New Mexico. And we used Highway 66, Route 66.
Yeah.
A lot of it. But
Now,
I remember
did you have an
going up.
uncle that worked there or something?
I had uncles that worked, yes, at Los Alamos. And
Right.
oddly enough, as a teenager, I had uncles that worked at NASA in White Sands, New Mexico, in Los Alamos. So I don't know how I knew that, except through my, let's see, it was Aunt Inez Smith, and Otha Martin was in the Air Force. I had an Uncle Gilmore in the Air Force on my dad's side, but this uncle was Florence, was very beautiful, Florence Smith. Her daddy was Johnny Smith, and her mother was Inez Smith. And she worked for the government, and she worked here in Florida. And she was very beautiful. She would come and go with the Shah of Iran when he would come in, and she would show me pictures, of the Shah of Iran and all that later. But I believe our family all had to do with these aliens, and extraterrestrials are family above. But this uncle that worked at Los Alamos, we went there and they said we could stay there. And we went to see some Indians that lived on a reservation that were Aunt Ruth. I had Aunt Bella Henry and Rufus Henry were my aunt and uncle. And Uncle Rufus drove the car. Aunt Bella sat in the front, real strange names. And me and Sisty, my grandmother, Esther Bolton, sat in the back of the car. But
What do
when
you
we
say?
visited,
Sisty, how do you spell her name?
it's Esther Bolton, Sarah Esther, Bolton, Esther
We call her
Bolton. She
Sisty.
married David Bolton.
You're called-
The reason was the way it's explained when I was little and I had little playmates. Everybody had a playmate but me, and I wanted to call my sister, but I didn't have the baby yet or at the time. So at the time when I was a young child, I named my grandmother my sister. She said it'd be okay to call her sister. So I wound up calling her Sisty. And so did all my brothers and sisters, Sistie, and we'd put that on Christmas cards and everything. But that's a funny little historical how we name our grandmas, my grandma and grandpa. But she was my Sisty, like my friends had a bigger sister. But anyway, we all went, and then he took us to the Bat Cave, Carlsbad Caverns. That was the cover. To go to Carlsbad Caverns, and we walked down there. It was miles down. I forget how far down. And then we sat in the evening and watched the bats come out. But the important part was when we went to White Sands for a picnic, like the next day, and we had uncle that there was two uncles, one on the Indian reservation and one that worked for Los Alamos, two of them. And so the one that worked for Los Alamos took me and all of us. And when we went over to White Sands, it's a park with white sand dunes. You can learn about White Sands outside Los Alamos. And when I went to the white sand dunes, these beings put my cousin to sleep because we were all three climbing tall sand dunes, having fun, rolling down and just, sliding down and getting up on top of the white sand dunes. And all three of us finally got on a really tall one. I mean, a really tall, like bigger than a hill, real tall sand dune. And that's when the girl, she was probably 13. He was about 10. I was about 9, thanks. And she said, look, a flying saucer, and it came over us. I mean, it was coming towards us, and it sort of like got big because that's, you coming to you, and it sort of spread out. And then as it went over, I watched it come down and into a valley like this one sitting there, and it sat down. And I told him, come on, let's go down there. Let's go. And I was all excited. I was real excited. Let's go. Let's go. And I touched them, and they were asleep, and I
Oh,
couldn't wake them up. It was
uh-huh.
weird, but somehow I knew they weren't supposed to go down. I was like, I somehow knew, even though I was a little kid, I knew they put them to sleep. So I went down, and then I saw a man waving like this to come towards him, standing in the doorway. So when I went in,
Humanoid or alien?
he looked like a man, like somebody I knew. So he waved for me like this,
Uh-huh.
come, and I was excited, And so I went in, and it was real bright like that, and I saw it looked like children to me, and that's when
Uh-huh.
see, I'm not going to say names, but in the past on a radio show, Janet, because the guy got very well known and became a speaker at the UFO thing when he had me
Uh-huh.
on his radio show. He got really well known after that because
Right.
they wanted to know what I'd do with that radio show. But I'm not going to mention names, but there were other people that were training at that time inside the spacecraft. And it was time sequencing, interdimensional, and it has space maps.
Is this the one whose name begins with S? S?
You
No.
mean which one? Because the
Who,
radio.
who's in the craft with you? What did his name begin with?
Oh yeah. You're right.
Okay, because I'm researching all this time right now because
Yeah,
I just finished a book on the 50s and I'm starting the 60s. So I'm right where the one decade ends and the other.
yeah. I don't know what year that he was doing that, but just to mention the S word, I met him later in San
Right.
Antonio. So they did make sure we met again as adults at that tree. A tree.
So that's what happens. They have you meet sometimes, like when you're children, and then we
interact.
meet each other when we're adults. And when you meet them later, you go, boy, you're familiar. But
Yeah.
I've had a couple of relationships. And once I got looking at their pictures, like when you get to know somebody, it's like, hey, look at this picture when I was a kid. And then I would see the picture and my mouth would drop up and I go, that's how I know you. That I saw you when you were that age.
Yeah.
We were on board the ship together. So that's
Yeah.
when you go, you're crazy. But it's like, no.
Well, you don't want to admit it, and you don't want to come forward with it, especially as a child when you're told all that stuff is hoopla or, oh, shh, we don't talk about angels.
Right. Can't talk about angels or ghosts or
heaven. That's
heaven and hell. Ghosts are demonic, and you're going to go to hell. So there's all these things to stifle us, so we're not able to present our personal truth. But yeah, when you say, and I've had some other people I've interviewed, they said, yeah,
right there, Melinda.
I met so I met a president, I met a congressperson. They meet famous people on board ships. And then later, when you try to tell it to somebody else, it's like, oh, you're crazy. But I've heard this, dozens of times from contactees experience.
And so time went by, and I can't tell you how much time, but maybe 45 minutes or so, because the people came and looking for us, and we'd been gone a long time,
Right.
So I just assumed that was a normal thing that you do, and let me off, and I walked back, and they woke up, and we went back down. It's no big deal.
So they
Except we
just
talked
opened
about
the door and you walked out. Or did they beat you down?
No, I mean, they just, at the door opened up and I came back out. So
okay,
it's different in there. They have interdimensional, it's a different world. And when you go into the spatial area is big, but it can change too. So,
right. So it's often bigger inside the craft
always
than what it looks like externally. That happens all the time. And you go, how's that? Look at this thing, it's tiny. How's that possible? Inside this thing, it's like as big as a hangar. When you're looking from outside, it's like 30 feet across. It doesn't make sense. But so I have a question because I just watched Oppenheimer. At the end of Oppenheimer, which took place at Los Alamos, White Sands, they said, what are you going to do with the town that was built? And Oppenheimer said, well, let's give it back to the Indians, which you talked about, the Indians. And they said, no, we have other plans. So apparently it kept going. So that was the end of World War II was in 45. I don't know what year Oppenheimer left that experiment. So then your uncle or something was recruited to go work at White Sands.
Yeah.
Now we know that the extraterrestrials did not like the atomic bomb going off. So maybe, do you think that these extraterrestrials that you met with were working with humans, or were they separate? Since
I
you had
believe that
humans on the ship. Yeah, go ahead.
I felt comfortable because I was later used interpretation with my mind. So every time, now that I look back, every experience was to learn to accept them and to be comfortable with them and to learn how to speak
Right.
to them. And they can speak to you with their mouth up close, but they can do ESP, and within 6 feet is what Tom and I said. Or they wear something, they'll have different headphone or something on their neck, if they're amphibious. So there's different types, and they can speak different ways, but they can communicate. They're brilliant, but I feel like it's almost like us in the future, which
Right.
that I haven't discounted that yet. I'm still, I keep an open mind.
These are
to
all theories.
everything.
We don't know.
Yeah, we're all the
tells us.
same. We're just experimenting. And I felt like from my experiments in the secret space program, remember with Tom, the
Right.
20-year back program, was that by the time I had been initiated as a child and then grown up and then wanting to be in the military and wanting to train, and the government putting all the money they did in my training, coast to coast and then in and out of country, there was a lot of money put into me and Tom
Right.
Morris, my husband. So by the time you look at the whole story, it starts making sense that these beings work with our government in a very secret capacity with various beings. And I don't think to me, it's more Star Trekian, that they
Right.
want us to advance. So when you get to those pictures, we can talk about your and my involvement in the Stargate and Rainbow and Aquarius and all those projects that apparently had extraterrestrials involvement.
Yeah, I
But
want
we
to
split,
have a
Melinda
meeting
asked.
privately to get more of the episodes, because I'm trying to put this in chronological order. I know we've talked for the last 10, 11, 12 years now, and we keep bouncing all over the place, but I'm
That's what
working organizing it. Like,
trying to get
I
it
used to be a
organized.
librarian, right? So my
Yeah,
librarian,
we're the librarians
Yeah.
we're avatars, but we're also here. We're called well, actually all of us are readers and writers for a reason, but yes, we're
Right.
historical human Homo sapiens sapiens, and part of our job is to protect the ancient wisdom of the past, but accept new thought teachings. And I think that's the loop we're in, is accepting both ancient
So
wisdom and
your
new thought
uncle wasn't
teachings.
on board the ship or anything. He was still outside looking for you. So the humanoids you saw, they could walk amongst us without
Oh
being.
yeah, well,
Uh,
just like us. I
they
mean,
don't have 5 fingers.
oh yeah, there's one group highly advanced from another universe or galaxy. I don't know which, because I wasn't told. I just told the upper quadrant, above the Milky Way and above ours. Remember? So that's a
Right.
part of the universe, and the universes can interact through like black spinning holes, right? It's like a window into a universe, but we don't know because we're not allowed to go in the black holes.
Right.
So the knowledge we had is we used wormholes that we created, and that's why we would put, we'd have like in Atlantis, and we'd have 12. We always had 12 in our groups, humans, and
Right.
we would work our minds together as empaths and psychics and the Psi-Force, and we would create these places to other worlds. And that's what we were doing in our Stargate
like
program.
Stargate?
When I met you. Yeah, that's when
Oh,
when I
Stargate?
met you, that's
Yeah.
what we were doing. We were training psychics you got involved in the almost table tapping or just getting where you could control telekinesis
Well,
and
we were
energy.
doing remote viewing, but that was
You were doing remote viewing
going
too.
into the 90s. So let's stay in the 60s right now.
Okay.
But these are previews. So people come back. We're going to cover all this. It's going to take us weeks to get through all this. We're going to do as much detail as we can. So you so did they take off in the ship, or you just went inside the ship? Did they go in off the?
Well, they took off. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I got off and went up, then they just took off like a star. They're just it's a I mean, it's just like from a blue light to a white light. It just goes whoosh.
So where did you
gone.
go? Did you were you able to see
I
the?
was watching. I was on the hill. I was back on the.
Oh, okay. I'm saying when you were in the craft, did they take
Yeah.
off when you
They
were in
waited
the
till I
craft?
went up there and then woke them up, and then they left. They woke the kids up.
Wait,
Remember the two kids?
let me go back and so you get on the ship. Did the ship stay on the ground, or did it take off with you
Oh
inside?
no! It stayed just like the one in the picture you got.
Okay,
There.
stayed on the ground. Okay.
Yeah.
So then it took off afterwards. There's another question I had. Hold on one second. So they looked humanoid. You didn't go traveling, and they just took off.
I
So
went back
did
through
you see anybody you knew from this life?
inside. Yeah, a lot of people that I'd meet in the future.
That you would meet in the future?
Yeah,
So
people in the
we'll talk
program.
about that. And I'm going to see who you can. I mean, some of these people are now passed over, so I think we could talk about that. I don't want to do people that are living, but those that are passed over, I think we could say, I saw so and so and so and so and so and so, right? So, okay, so
I don't know. You're weaving the tale for people, but
well,
with the experiences.
my other experiencers that saw people like at meetings and stuff, they said I saw I don't know, Nixon or something, or I saw Reagan. Yeah, there's one that I'll have her on with you sometime, and you guys can share with the different power figures that they saw. Now I was in a meeting that I saw lots of political figures, but I didn't necessarily know other names, because some of them were from foreign nations and stuff. But I knew they were powerful because
they told me about who would be president for Obama and Trump. They did tell me that. So I told you, you and I had arguments like crazy. I always knew. And I didn't know how I knew, but I knew, and it always works.
Andrew Bashago and George Green said that they were revealing to certain select people who the future presidents are. So that shows that elections don't really.
There's some kind of evolving, and how they can help all of us. But yeah, everybody is supposedly moving forward. But when my understanding is we weren't moving fast enough. That
they're trying to get us to, because we're up against a lot of factors right now. Yeah. The planet's heating up. Our oceans are dying. We're losing fish. We're losing food. We're losing this. We're losing that. So I mean, they can they can tell the future and everything. So
they can help us, but it's our job to protect the planet as stewards. So they've got us divided in those that are going into space and those that are Terrans that are going to be the stewards for the planet. So there's going to be a huge division of people over the next 30 years. You know, so there's the caregivers and the caretakers of the planet, and the explorers and travelers like Star Trek. There's always been those, but it's not been so open about it. And I understand the reason was from the old wars and then the genetic coding they did to blend them all together, because we're all a blend. You know, what, 23 and 23, 46 chromosomes. Some of them are not on and off, you know, so you know, we're genetically correct for what they need at this time, but we never know what the future holds, what we're going to look like in the future. You know, traveling in space makes you look like your picture here. you atrophy really quick. Ask anybody that's been up in space.
Right.
You become very thin and very weak. Your muscles can't operate.
So
So
it'd
we're
be
not made
optimal
for
to
that.
settle another planet rather than keep a species in space.
We have to evolve. So
Right.
we'll see what happens. But some of
Oh.
us do work with the business. Melinda, any questions?
Yeah.
I was,
Hi, can you hear me?
let me just finish sequence and then I'll ask you, Melinda. So let me
Okay.
just finish. So, oops, so you land, and so do you walk over and wake up your cousins, or do they wake up
They
spontaneously?
just sort of woke up by themselves. I think they put them to sleep and they woke them up, to be honest.
Okay, and
I
then
don't think I had anything to do with it.
where were the adults? When did they come back into the picture?
Oh, not till we walked down the hill. I mean, I was telling them what happened. I said, why'd y'all go to sleep? You know, I was sort of figured they put them to sleep. So my mind, I was trying to figure out, I was already like a little, what do they call it? Sleuth. I was trying to figure out, you know, did they put them to sleep or did y'all go to sleep? Like, why'd y'all go to sleep? And they're like, I don't know. They didn't know why they were sleeping, but that didn't make any sense to me, right? So I was being the investigator. I've been an investigator ever since, you know. I mean, at that age, I've been trying to figure this stuff out. So I've always been on a quest, you know. But
what did they say? What did they say? We weren't asleep, or we don't remember?
Just said they were sleepy. They were sleepy and they woke up and they were just tired. And I told them what happened. I said, you know, it's the flying saucer, and they remembered that. So we run down saying, "Daddy, Daddy." They were telling, and so finally my aunt and uncle, he stayed. Their dad didn't even come looking for them, but it was getting purpley red sky, like behind you. The sky was changing. It was purpley red. I remember that. It was a very, I don't know why the colors were important, but it was getting dark, I guess.
Right.
That's
And so
interesting as
they
you
were like,
say
"Oh, we've
about
been
the
looking for
colors
you."
of the sky,
Yeah,
the red, and I've seen that.
yeah,
I see everybody come out of their cars and they want to get the best picture because it shows it crystal clear. And you
yeah.
see that image. It's
It
quite
just,
interesting to see.
yeah,
And what
it was
else it
important.
brings out and shows you, that's another story, but it's very interesting to see.
Yeah. So they were like, "Come on," you know. And so my grandmother says, "Where have you been? We've been looking all over for you in these sand dunes." And so the 13-year-old said, she got on, because tell him, just saying, "Yeah, I got to go on the flying saucer." And my grandmother was like, "What? And
What?
where have y'all been? Where'd you go?" And they're like, "Yeah, she got, well, where were you?" And she said, "Well, we were asleep." And like, "Oh, you were asleep." And sound like a fairy tale to her. She's like, "Okay, so y'all got up there and fell asleep then." She heard fell asleep, right? So they said, no, they went up there and got tired and fell asleep and walked down. And we said, no, you know, it's like, I saw the flying saucer. So then we went in the car. We all got in the car with the uncle, and we were sitting in the back seat. And it was very important because the first time my grandmother has ever smacked my leg, ever, never laid her hands on me.
Wow.
But I kept telling the kids, urging them. They kept saying, "But Daddy, you work on these flying saucers." And we see one. And that's when he looked back at them, and he got so mad. And my uncle Rufus was shocked, because to all of us it changed the energy. It's like, I told you not, you know. He's like really mad. He was driving. They looked back and
which uncle worked on the
everybody.
saucers? What was it? The name of the uncle that worked on the saucers?
I don't remember his name, to be honest with you. I just remember he got really, really mad. I never saw him again. There was uncles that worked out in Los Alamos that came through NASA in Houston and stayed at our house. And then they went on out there from NASA to Los Alamos. But I just know this one worked on in the lab, or, you know, because the kids weren't supposed to know he worked on flying saucers, but somehow
they knew.
You know how kids learn whether they're not. But Daddy, we saw one, you know. And really, Daddy. And he said, "Don't you ever talk about it." And I'll lose my job. You won't be able to eat or sleep or anything.
Well,
Don't
that's
you
true.
ever
That's
talk about
true.
it." It
So
just and then
I
also
wonder how he
you work on
slipped up that
flying.
the kids knew. So that's
Well,
something that'd be interesting if you could.
I said that. I was sitting behind my uncle in the back seat, and I said, "So I said, you work on flying saucers?" And my grandma slapped my leg like that. "Don't you talk about this ever again?" And do you
Wow.
hear him? Yeah. So she lectured to me. She pulled me back because I was excited. I looked, even though he was yelling about the flying saucers, I pulled myself up on the seat. They were thick, and when I grabbed the seat, you work on flying saucers? Like I want,
Uh-huh.
because I mean I've just had the experience of my life,
Right.
and I want to talk about it. And so my grandmother pulled me back, and so it was Uncle Rufus and Aunt Bella, her and me. So it's already tight. But I'm a little kid, so I could sit up between their three legs, in the
Right.
car.
Yeah.
And they were wide seats back then. They didn't have arms or nothing. It was just a big, like a couch. But
Bench.
she pulled me back. First time she's ever, it wasn't hard, but it was
Right.
just shocking because, she's never hit me ever. So,
Wow.
didn't you hear him? He'll lose his job if you talk about that. Don't you ever talk about that again. So
Wow. Is
sit
anybody
back and-
alive? Still
Huh?
alive that's in that car with you? Is there
What?
anybody still alive that was in that car with you?
No, uncle, they're all dead.
What about the cousins? You
I
don't know.
don't know. No,
Okay.
we never saw after we left there, and after what all happened, we didn't leave on good terms, all of us kids, knowing what happened, because we were still sort of secretly going outside a lot at night and talking about it.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't put us together anymore after.
Well, that's what they
It
do.
was a once in a lifetime kind of thing. No,
Right.
we didn't get to go see him anymore.
Anymore. Wow, that's fascinating.
They sort of thought I was weird.
Well, we're
I was
running
a
out of
weird
time,
kid.
so we want to start wrapping this up. Melinda, do you have any questions for Theresa and
Well,
Yes.
about this episode? Yeah.
Um,
it's hard for her to listen and then figure out, like if she's supposed to ask questions for
okay,
people that may
here's
wonder.
one. Why is it important to share your experiences with others?
Okay, now
Yes.
I'm not sure that it is important, but it feels like it's part of the disclosure movement with
Okay.
Dr. Sala, of course, Dr. Lessin, but Dr. Lessin has a different disclosure for the Anunnaki. Michael Sala's doing it. Dr. Stephen Greer has his version. And then Janet and I both work with Alfred Lambermont Weber in Canada, and he has his version of exopolitics, or disclosing politics in the UFO UAP movement. But Janet and I started a long time ago for the Ascension Center, avatars, and the psychic side with Stargate and Portal Stargate, which we have many years ago. There, oh, you got all that twirling knives, and so
Yeah, I'm going to do this. These are this is what's coming next episode, because we're running out of time for this one.
Yeah, these could be a good series, a good TV series. It really could, because it weaves how these ETs have told a story on the planet to certain people, and it makes sense, if you start finding all of the pieces. So that's why we started the Alien Contact Organization, why I have ACO Club now, ACO with, and now that was Dr. Not Stephen Greer. What's the other doctor? Janet, dang it. Not Jan, the one before Jan Aldridge. Before Jan Aldridge, and before Captain McDonald, with the ACO in 2014.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Jan's husband.
Oh, Bruce Maccabee.
There it is, Dr. Bruce Maccabee. Thank you. Yeah, we started this a long time ago, 10 years ago. It'll be October 2024. Oh, you've got something coming out 10 years later.
Yeah, this is coming out. So I'm covering the early 60s. I just published this one, which goes through the 50s.
Wow.
So my hobby is writing books. So I did this one before that, and this one before that, and this one before that. So I'm publishing a new book about every 2 months, and I'm having a really good time.
Wow, very
Working on
beautiful.
a design for the cover
Very talented.
for this portal Stargate. So this information that we're gathering here, this is just previews, will be part of the portal Stargate series.
Nice.
I suspect that once we get all this together, it's going to be maybe 1 to 4 or 5 books. It's going to be because we're unpacking our lives. I'm 65 and Teresa's, what are you, 72?
It's hard. It's very hard to
We're
memorize.
going through this, and we're weaving the true stories because
Yeah.
see, when I should put this one by the satellite. We're not in space yet. This is where I was so
Isn't it funny
shocked.
Oppenheimer came out? Isn't it funny too that the
Oh,
movies, and that Ithaca, that Project Ithaca came out, what, 4 years ago or something? I don't even know when it came out. We totally missed it, but it was sort of gory and dark. But I think the point was we can create our own reality and make it seem very, very dark. But on the other side, we were just trying to create wormholes to get from one place to
the
another.
two of us,
People are trying to get home. There's
this whole movement, there's so many people that are dark. And I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to wrap my head. I'm not judging or criticizing, but some people they have negative experiences. Now, you and I both have had very
good.
Like you said, you were excited. Every time I was in a craft or involved, I was
You
excited.
get energy. Yeah, it's
energized.
positive.
I was I was walking on air. I was like, oh, who can I tell? Oh no, I can't tell anybody. I could barely sustain, hold
They don't
my
even know what you're talking about. And if the adults figured out, they think you dreamed it or you imagined it. So Melinda, the reason it's important, I think, is because now I call it the ascension age, and I've written several books, Melinda, about this in the future, but I didn't know what or how I was going to write it. So I started years ago, August 2007, for the UFO Digest in Canada. I had a publisher in Canada, and he brought a lot of people together. He's dead now. It was Dirk Vanderploeg of the UFO Digest, and he brought me
shocking.
Kevin Smith
all
on
the
his
people
radio
that are
show.
now, that we have
So many
that
people.
we've worked with these people for. We've worked with these people for
so many
30,
years.
40,
Don
50 years.
Berliner.
So many of them are gone now, and I think that's why, for me, it's important.
Real investigators.
Yeah, we have
real
to get
true
the story
researchers
out, not only for us, but for these people that have come before us, because we owe everybody that devoted their lives to this. And some people,
Carl Lorenzen. Remember, Melinda, you may not know this, but the first person that was really out there in the UFO movement was Carl Lorenzen up in Wisconsin. Carl, her name like the color Carl behind Janet.
Coral.
Carl,
C-O-R-A-L, yeah.
Carl, L-O.
And Lorenzen is Lorenson.
Yeah, R-Z-E-N, Lorenzen. Yeah, her and her husband, and she wrote for the Wisconsin newspaper, and I'm a journalist. And I was, from the time I was a little girl in the 3rd grade, I said I was going to be a writer. And I stood in front of the whole class with another girl named Karen. And we told them we were going to be
We're out
writers.
of time, so we have to wrap this up. Sorry, I have to do like a news show. We're out of time because we're going to keep these down to 1 hour. We will be back on Tuesday with another episode.
Can we put a copy on our shows? Will you?
I'm going to send you the link, so we'll do logistics after this. I will send you all the links. But anyway, I want to say goodbye to everybody. We can end the recording, and then we can all talk afterwards. But thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on your show today.
So
thanks for coming,
I'm
Melinda.
Stop the recording. Just here we go. Thank you, everybody. Hold on. Where's recording? Stop recording.